Hey guys, it's Skybird here, and today we're going to be doing a breakdown build for my Pohatu Mistika build, which you should see up in the corner. So essentially we're going to be rebuilding this from the ground up. However, the claws were actually built in a separate video, so I highly encourage you to watch that video first or after this one, and note that I will link it in the description below. So the claws here, as you guys know, function in a pretty cool way. Where you can actually press the base on them, the pinchers themselves work, and then you can rotate them and use them as propellers. But what character does that belong on, right? Well, this is my Pohatu Mistika build. We're going to go ahead and start with the torso itself, and I'm actually going to move this mask out of the way and the head here out of the way, just so I have a little bit of room to breathe. There are a decent amount of parts here, but this is what you will need, and as you can see, most of the items here are silver, with the exception of a couple of light gray items like these axles here, the dark gray axle at the base. The rest is basically either black or brown, so it's a fairly straightforward build in and of itself, but let's get right on into it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to take one of these socket connectors here, and we're going to attach a 3-long axle to it. I'm not actually going to push it all the way across though, or into the middle. We're going to leave that gap there, and we're going to take this piece here. This is reddish brown. I believe this appears in regular brown as well though, but it's not going to matter that much. There actually is not a huge difference between reddish brown and standard brown, so you should be able to get away with using either color pretty well here. And then you're going to go ahead and close that up with another socket on this side. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to take a 5-long axle and try and center it in here. And then we're going to take these connectors here in brown, and we're going to put one here on each side. These are essentially just going to bulk up the body a little bit, and actually can be used to add armor or other things to your characters. However, in this case, for my Pohatu build, I just leave it open. I like the aesthetic here, but you could attach a Metru armor piece or whatever you would like. After that, we are going to attach the ball joints to these connections here for the legs. However, I'm going to leave them clipped in because these pieces are quite fragile and I don't want to risk breaking them. So what we're going to do instead is we're actually going to move upward, and we're going to take our Borak limbs here and attach one to each side, just like this. This is actually what is going to become our body. And I think this is part of the sort of ingenious part of this build here, is that these Borak limbs actually appear in a ton of colors. Most of the Metru colors, all of the original Mata colors, and the Turaga colors as well. So we're taking a 2-long axle and we're putting it into every single axle hole on those Borak limbs, as you can see here. So you get 4 of those 2-length axles, 1 on each side. Then we're going to go ahead and take this piece here in silver for Pohatu, since they do not exist in standard brown, unless I'm missing out on something here. But we're going to go ahead and take that and just put it right in here. And next we're going to take our 3-long axle and we're going to slide in 2 of these 2-length thin lift arms, just like this here. And these are honestly just kind of going to act like spacers, but these do work out well enough for this purpose here. And we're going to go ahead and take yet another set of these here, just like this. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and connect it inward. This can be a little bit tricky, so let me go ahead and push that axle through here, just so that I can kind of slide this in place. And if there's not enough room in here, what I can go ahead and do, because I believe I may have ordered these slightly incorrectly, is I can actually put these ones in the middle here. So I'll show you what that looks like once it is all together, but basically like this here, and then it will slide down. And that allows these ball joint pieces to not actually contact this piece. There are other pieces you can use to do this as well, but for the Pohatu build, we need that axle hole right inside of there, as you can see. So we're going to go ahead and just close this right on up with yet another one of these Technic triangle pieces. And then we're going to go ahead and move forward to the neck connection here. So we're going to take our 3rd socket right here, and we're going to attach a 5-length axle, I believe, to it. And we're going to push it out so that we make sure that that axle sticks out in the front. Then we will take our Hordika armor piece. I prefer to use the pearl light gray so that the colors are as consistent as possible through this model here. And then just take any color bushing, it does not really matter, and just push it right on inside of that 4-long axle with a stopper. there. You could use other lengths of axles as well. I know that that appears also as a 5-length axle with brown if you want to introduce more brown on the torso, but I think the gray just does a good job of staying neutral. Then we will go ahead and attach the head itself to the body, and as you can see, things are starting to come together. So the torso here is pretty much done outside of the ball joints on the hips. Now we're going to attach these sockets, and if you don't recognize these pieces, these are actually from the Ben 10 series. I believe these came out in either 2010 or 2011 on a set called, I'm probably going to get this wrong, but I think it's Humongosaur or Gigantosaur or something like that. And we're just going to attach those. Those are where our arms are going to attach later. Next up, we'll go ahead and take our sockets, as mentioned before, and these ball joints. It can be any type of ball joint so long as it has an axle hole there, so it doesn't have to have the axle hole go all the way through, but these tend to fit more secure. Thankfully, more modern ball joint pieces do have a better fit than the older style, so it is something that LEGO has addressed at the very least, but it is nice to have options there. And then we'll take a couple of pins and just stick them right into these leg holes here. I'm not going to connect anything to those just yet because it's very easy to knock armor off of those pieces. Instead, we're going to go ahead and connect our legs first, and I really like the Paraka leg in silver. It's probably my personal favorite of the 3 legs we got in this color, and go ahead and just snap it in there. One way that I've found to really ensure that this doesn't snap, but it's not a guarantee, is to just squeeze on both sides as you insert the piece. You're basically helping to reinforce that connection, and so oftentimes that helps to keep it from snapping. But that is where we are at so far. So the next thing we want to do is we're actually going to start using these lightsaber bar pieces. The first 2 are going to go in the upper arm here, and the second pair are actually going to go in the legs. But before we attach them, we're going to attach these fancy little Technic pieces right on the back of the legs. Honestly, these could be any color you want, but they do appear in pearl silver, so I figure using those here works out well enough. And then we're going to go ahead and push that lightsaber bar right on through. This can be a bit of a tough squeeze in there. The bar hole in these is actually quite tight, quite rigid, I guess. So it can be hard to get these in and hard to get them out. But it definitely is possible. I took this apart for the purpose of this video. Next up, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're actually going to attach these pieces to the arms here via those black bar pieces, and they actually connect quite well. Once the arm is in place, these will no longer wobble, but for now there will be a little bit of wobble there, and that is perfectly okay. Next, going to do the exact same thing on the opposite side so that this is armored now, and then we are going to cover up the knees. If you don't like this option for armor, you can just use more of these black double sockets in the legs here, but for the arms instead, and then connect these Mari shoulder pads to those instead. But I wanted to make sure I brought in a little bit of extra brown color in this character because there just isn't a lot of support for brown in more modern Bionicle. And if you think that's scary, there's even less support for colors like standard green in Bionicle after 2003, which is absolutely crazy. But now we are just going to go ahead and put one of these in the feet here. It can be the version that has just 1 pinhole or 2 pinholes. I just had more of these to use and didn't want the black showing through. But thankfully, both versions also show up in silver as well. So not something you need to worry about too much. But go ahead and do that, one for each side. And we're just going with the classic build for the legs here. This is not a build that I came up with, but I've seen this kind of all over the place where you actually use a Borak foot and a Hordika foot and connect them together just like this. And it works out really well. I like to reinforce the connection, however, by adding these pieces here. So I just put an axle in it and then slide it right into this opening here. It just gives you a little bit more surface to contact the ground. And if you wanted to connect something to the base of this, you now have 4 pinholes instead of 3. Plus you have that base axle connection if you wanted to use that for something as well. So we're going to do the same thing on this one here, just connecting this axle through to this, whatever this piece is called. But go ahead and connect that and connect that as well right there in that center pinhole. Also, I got that backwards. Just realized. So, gonna fix that very quickly so our character doesn't look super goofy. But, go ahead and flip that around. All right, so that is our foot done. And of course, I do this for Pohatu because he is known for having his foot attachment weapons. And although I would love to do it with the Inika feet pieces, since you can stack those feet pieces quite well, unfortunately, they don't appear in either brown or silver. So we're really out of color choices for those. Thankfully, the Hordika foot appears in pearl silver. And again, the Borak foot being old brown is really close to reddish brown and works out well enough for my purposes here. For the jets on the back, we are just going to connect them to those bars. This does mean that it'll offset a little bit, but I actually kind of like that. It gives you a little bit of play with the pieces, so you can kind of wobble them around if you want a different aesthetic, or again, if you want to attach something to this axle, it can kind of dodge the ankle and the foot here. Do the same on the opposite side here, and again, just making sure that we have this, whatever this is, this protrusion here on the inside of the leg connection. And that is it for that portion of the build. The last part is a little bit controversial. It's definitely not a step that you need to take, but you can add these pin axle pieces to these Motoro shoulder pads, and then you can connect them to the pinholes from the inside here. This is going to put a little bit of stress on the Hordika armor. However, it will not damage the piece. And honestly, I don't mind for the aesthetic. Because I think it looks quite well. It adds obviously more silver to the character. It also helps to bulk him up compared to some of the other Toa figures. So if you wanted him to look kind of like a stronger figure, then you could absolutely do that here. But that is pretty much it for our Pohatu build. When we want to connect the arms to it, we are just going to take this ball joint that is built into the arm. Again, go ahead and watch the video linked in the description, and you will honestly just connect it like that. It's pretty simple, and it goes right underneath the armor connection here, so it works out quite perfectly. And of course, you can tilt that arm as well. But that is it for this one, guys. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, because the videos take a little bit of effort, and of course, we are growing quite quickly, thankfully, on YouTube as well. Of course, you can always check out my links in the description, not only for the video featuring this propeller claw here, but also for my Discord and Instagram links and, Linktree, Patreon, whatever else. If you'd like to support the channel, my Patreon is open. You can check that out, and I'll see you all in the next one. Take care.